Before any data could travel, it had to exist as something physical. The punch card was one of the earliest answers to that problem. A simple piece of cardboard, a series of holes, present or absent, punched or intact. That binary logic, on or off, yes or no, 1 or 0, is the foundation of everything digital that followed. 1 bit. That's what each hole represents. The smallest possible unit of information a computer can work with. On its own, it tells you almost nothing. But it was the starting point. Every file, every photo, every message you've ever sent is, at its core, an enormous collection of ones and zeros, billions of decisions, each one as simple as a hole in a card. The punch card didn't last, but the logic behind it never left. Byte, 8 bits together form a byte. That's enough to represent a single character, 1 letter, 1 number, 1 symbol. The letter a space, a comma. Alone, still not much. But now you're building something. Magnetic tape was one of the first media capable of storing bytes in meaningful quantities. Reels of thin plastic coated in iron oxide, spinning past a red/write head that magnetized tiny regions to record data. It was slow, sequential. To reach anything in the middle, you had to wind past everything before it. And yet magnetic tape never really disappeared. Modified and scaled up, it's still used in enterprise data centers today, where cost matters more than speed. Some estimates suggest more data is stored on tape globally than on any other medium. The byte gave data a unit. Tape gave it a place to live. Kilobyte, 1,000 bytes make a kilobyte, enough to store a short paragraph of text, enough in the early days of computing to feel genuinely substantial. The floppy disk was the kilobyte era's great liberator. Before it, your data was locked to whichever machine it lived on. The floppy changed that. A thin magnetic disk inside a plastic shell, and suddenly your files could move. You could carry your work home, share it with a colleague, hand software to a friend. Computing stopped being a solo stationary activity. The 3.5-inch version that dominated the late 1980s and 1990s held 1.44 megabytes. They were fragile. Heat and magnets could destroy them. But what they represented was enormous. Data had become portable. Once portability arrived, the only question was how far it could go. Megabyte, 1,000 kilobytes. A megabyte was where digital media truly came into its own. Enough capacity for music, for software, for something that felt like a real product you could hold. The compact disc made that real. Launched in 1982, it held around 700 megabytes, nearly 500 times a floppy. Music could be released without compromise. Software shipped on a single disk instead of a stack of floppies. Games became richer. Encyclopedias moved from shelves to a single shiny circle. For the first time, an enormous amount of content could be pressed into millions of identical copies and shipped anywhere in the world. The red mechanism was elegant. A laser-traced microscopic pits pressed into a reflective surface. No contact, no wear, in theory. In practice, one deep scratch in the wrong place made the whole thing unreadable. But for its era, the megabyte on a disk felt like abundance. Gigabyte, 1,000 megabytes. A gigabyte was the unit that made storage feel genuinely personal, large enough to carry real collections of music, documents, and photos. No format made that more immediate than the USB drive. When flash-based USB drives arrived in the early 2000s, they made the floppy look ancient almost overnight. No moving parts, no special software. Plug it into any computer, drag your files across, unplug it. Done. Gigabytes of storage small enough to clip onto a keychain, compatible with virtually every machine on the market. The real weakness was human. Drives get left in borrowed laptops, washed in pockets, forgotten at the bottom of bags. And data can degrade over years without anything actively refreshing it. But the point was simple. The gigabyte fit in your pocket. Terabyte, 1,000 gigabytes. The terabyte is where bulk storage lives. Entire media libraries, years of documents, raw video footage, and the hard disk drive has been its home. IBM invented the hard drive in 1956. Early models were the size of a refrigerator. By the 1980s, they'd shrunk enough for personal computers, transforming what machines could do. Data no longer needed to be inserted or connected. It was simply there, permanent and instantly accessible. Systems became faster and more self-contained, and digital content exploded in size because storage was finally keeping up. The mechanism is mechanical, magnetic platters spinning at high speed, while a red/right arm sweeps across them. That design delivers more raw storage per dollar than almost any alternative, which is why terabyte-scale drives remain standard for backups. But drop a running drive at the wrong moment, and the arm can graze the platter. Data doesn't corrupt gradually. It disappears. Petabyte. 1,000 terabytes. A petabyte is a unit most individuals will never personally own, but one that companies and institutions quietly depend on every day. The solid-state drive is the technology that made storage at this scale practical. Where hard drives use spinning platters and moving arms, SSDs store data in flash memory chips, no mechanical components at all. The result was access speeds that made older storage feel like a different era entirely. Computers that once took minutes to boot started doing so in under 15 seconds. Applications launched before you finished clicking. The entire experience of using a machine shifted, not because processors got faster, but because storage finally stopped being the bottleneck. NVMe variants connect directly to the processor, reaching speeds of multiple gigabytes per second. The difference isn't incremental, it's categorical. Enterprise SSDs now anchor data centers where petabytes need to be served reliably, quickly, and without interruption. Exabyte, 1,000 petabytes. An exabyte only becomes meaningful when you stop thinking about individual devices and start thinking about civilization-scale infrastructure. Cloud storage is where exabytes live. Files no longer stored on a device you possess, but on remote servers distributed across data centers worldwide, accessible from anywhere, synchronized across all your devices, recoverable even if your hardware fails completely. The cloud didn't just solve a storage problem. It changed the relationship between people and their data.